know our beloved Tom Ott. He is speaking this morning, and it is my great pleasure to introduce him to you all, if you don't know him. Tom recently served as president of the board here at USG for his second time. He's a brave man. He is an avid fisherman who shared his love and knowledge of fishing at our retreat in June. He lives here in Mount Airy with his beloved wife, Dolores. Welcome back to our pulpit, Tom.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Jen for that wonderful introduction. It was nice to be introduced by our congregation's new board president. We are in wonderful hands. The reading this morning from the Cathedral of the World by Forest Church. God language can tie people into knots, of course, in part because God is not God's name. Referring to the highest power we can imagine, God is our name for that which is greater than all and yet present in each. For some, the highest imaginable power will be a petty and angry tribal baron ensconced high above the clouds on a golden throne, visiting punishment on all who do not believe in him. But for others, the highest power is love, goodness, justice, or the spirit of life itself. Each of us projects our limited experience on a cosmic screen in letters as big as our minds can fashion. For those whose vision is constricted, illiberal, narrow-minded people, this can have horrific consequences. But others respond to the munificence of creation with broad imagination and sympathy, answering to the highest and best within and beyond themselves. They draw lessons and fathom meaning so redemptive that surely it touches the divine. I have a friend who was a member of St. Vincent's Parish in Germantown. Now, St. Vincent's would seem like a Pope Francis kind of Catholic church. Last I heard, it is open to LGBTQ persons and has strained relations with the Philadelphia Archdiocese. My friend, nevertheless, decided that the strictures and dogma inherent in the institution were still too uncomfortable for him to continue attending, and he left with both regret and relief. I tell you this because one day while he and I were driving to a favorite trout stream, the talk turned to religion, and my friend said somewhat offhandedly, perhaps humorously, perhaps not, that what I attended wasn't really a church. I found this strange since after leaving St. Vincent's, he and his wife formed a group of similar-minded former Catholics who meet at his home every Sunday. He doesn't consider what he and his friends are doing as church, but rather secular meditation. I think he's dead wrong. I think what they are doing may be church in a singularly honest form, which is to say very close to Unitarian Universalism. Which leads me to my themes this morning. What is church and what is faith? Church is usually considered a noun. That is a specific thing, a physical place. A church is a property. It has an address such as 6511 Lincoln Drive. Yet the notion of physical space can be seen as inconsequential, with due respect to our Buildings and Grounds Committee. Since what really happens in a church, in this church, is a verb. While we all love this magnificent building, it is interesting to point out that if the iconography reflects the congregation, then we are all solidly Christian, which a recent survey illustrates emphatically that we are not. Further, if you haven't already taken a look at our magnificent stained glass windows, while historic Unitarianism rejects the Trinity, if you look closely, you will see that Trinity symbols abound. The structure that sits at 6511 Lincoln Drive is clearly not a reflection of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and yet it is here that we meet. And of course, when we are not here, it is merely the home of a wayward sparrow and an ongoing list of needed repairs. As for me, this building is remarkably similar to the Catholic Church of my youth, though certainly not as terrifying as was my childhood church, where every stone and wood panel was fraught with intimations of eternal suffering should my Da Vinci animated father find me unworthy. Still, we all carry the imprint of early experience, and on rare occasion, frankly, I find the space closing in on me. You'll forgive me an aside, but I like giving my meditations from the pulpit as it helps me exercise memories of a sour parish priest and his weekly scolding that seemed anchored in the Old Testament, or perhaps just in his angry world. Happily, the remnant claustrophobia of an overbearing and corrupt message is rare. It is rare because over the time I have been a member of USG, I have come to know what church is. It is not the building at all, as I am able to pretty much ignore the Christian trappings and enjoy the stained glass as a well-wrought addition to our Sunday service. Quite simply, church is you. As Reverend Kent likes to say, when we are together, we do church. Church is here at 6511 Lincoln Drive. Church was also at the last USG family retreat, when one of our young congregants squealed with delight as she caught her first fish and held it up to the sky. The gesture was not a look-at-me self-congratulation. It was radiant, as if showing the angels her very first bluegill, and then she put it back. It was church, and I think, too, it embodied faith for both her and for me. Where my friend made his mistake, I believe, is that he confuses religious liberty with a rejection of rigid attitude toward faith. He does not see dogma when he looks at USG, and so he misses our church. What is ironic is that when he and his friends are meditating at his home, they too, it seems to me, are experiencing the joy of church. The same connectedness that makes us spiritually whole together. It is ineffable and it is sacred. It is as joyous as a little girl catching her first fish. So to my friend, I would say that USG is most certainly a church, whether we meet here formally, or at least as formally as we ever get, at coffee hour or the Diamond Ridge Conference Center. Service, fellowship, play. Church is we together, celebrating our being together in body, mind, and spirit. Well, assuming I've made a case for us being a church, that part seemed pretty easy. Now for the hard part, how do I negotiate the idea of faith through the lens of Unitarian Universalism, which offers a good deal of one-voice social justice guidance with an occasional discordant note, but allows for a pretty much on-your-own approach to spiritual development. Given this, from here anything I say about faith may or may not resonate with you, so if it seems not to, feel free to look around and search for Trinity symbols. To start, I struggle with the concept of faith. As I have mentioned in earlier meditations, by discipline I am a product of the Enlightenment. I have studied the Middle Ages and am painfully aware of the evil that religious domination can perpetrate. The Dark Ages were truly dark. We are indebted to those who countered that corruption and began the slow ascent to a form of reason that ultimately became our understanding of science. Regrettably, the excesses of religion are hideously still very much with us, as the atrocities detailed in the PA Attorney General's report on decades of abuse by Catholic priests would seem to illustrate. I say seem because at this moment the report is being suppressed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, pending litigation by, wait for it, those clergy who are named in the report. And then there's the sickening use of biblical scripture by the U.S. Attorney General to justify abducting children from their parents as they try to enter the U.S. Differences of opinion on immigration policy are legitimate, and the law as it stands now is clear, if wrong-headed. But separating children from their parents in the name of that law, and worse, as a warning to others who might attempt to enter the country illegally, is obscene. And anyone accepting Scripture as a valid reason for that is the embodiment of religion gone horribly wrong. Nevertheless, thank you. Nevertheless, while reeling at the excesses perpetrated in the name of religion, I have come over the years, and especially since attending USG, to believe that allegiance to reason alone may lead to a sterility that leaves us short of what it should mean to be fully human. A question that arises from my struggle with faith as a UU is what exactly, as a Unitarian Universalist, do I believe? For surely the spiritual cannot be experienced in a vacuum. If I name it as such, the spirit within, am I not expressing faith in something? For many of us, it may be easier to describe what we don't believe than what we do. In his brilliant January 22, 2006 sermon at All Souls, Forest Church playfully describes this phenomenon. He writes, imagine yourself at a dinner party. Due to your select and enlightened circle of friends, you are the only person at the party who actually goes to church. When this telling bit of information inadvertently leaks out, you pique the curiosity of your companions, all of whom graduated from organized religion years ago. They want to know why. They want to know more. All of a sudden, the dinner party is in jeopardy. Feeling more defensive than evangelical, you start pushing spin control buttons. Well, not really church, you see. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I've always wondered about you Unitarians. What do you believe? The woman across from you asks. Actually, nothing, you sputter. Well, not really nothing, more like anything. Then you rush to assure them that you don't believe that Jesus was born of a virgin or resurrected on the third day. You almost never read the Bible, and you certainly agree that religion is the most dangerous force in the world, especially today. To which your friends respond, these seem very much like the reasons they don't go to church. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Forest Church, in that sermon and others, argued forcefully that Unitarian Universalism is indeed a religion. I honestly don't know if it's accurate to call Unitarian Universalism a religion. I'm not even sure I want to. In even its loosest sense, religion denotes an agreed-upon set of beliefs to which all adherents must subscribe, usually with fairly stiff consequences should lapses occur. It is not too much of a stretch to suggest that organized religion is, well, to be polite, oppressive. But I do know we are a church, perhaps even a place that may more fully serve as home for those who have rejected authoritarian and corrupt religious institutions than virtually any other. But here's a warning to those who may wish to join us. Unitarian Universalism is not easy. There is no lazy collective mumbling from a common gospel, nor is there shared comfort that priests and ministers will lead us to a detailed understanding of this life and beyond. If only we do as they say. We are free to disagree with just about anything, and usually we do. Unitarian Universalism demands attention to what is in our own heads and hearts. It requires that we take seriously the spirit of life that is addressed each Sunday in what I consider our seminal hymn. even as I struggle to understand the Spirit in my own life. We are not, as someone might imagine, a secular religion, which I think accurately describes a cult. For even our atheists, while rejecting a culturally approved God, must, if they sit with this congregation, consider the connectedness they have with us and the mystery and miracles we all encounter every day in our mindful moments. If not, then they truly are in the wrong place. We are a church not because of the physical space we occupy on Sunday morning, but because our collective spirit extends beyond this building. It is found in our caring committee, our meditation groups, attention to our youth, our small group ministries, and most certainly our social justice work. Did I mention the little girl who caught her first fish? Yet beyond all that, we have what most other religious organizations lack. Boston aside, we have a faith in each other untethered from doctrine, creed, and thankfully, direction. To be part of this congregation, you need not believe as I do or as the person sitting next to you does. Nor must you take your lead from our excellent minister. But you must believe that we have a common spiritual purpose that is part of and yet more than the good works that we do. For without that spiritual connection, we may as well be a nonprofit in the service of promoting social justice. That said, the Spirit, whether or not embodied in religion, would seem to require faith. And faith is belief, and belief, when it morphs into religion, worries me. For instance, I find the following contradictory quotes to be valid. 1, science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Albert Einstein. Religion is the impotence of the human mind to deal with occurrences it cannot understand. Karl Marx. And this, I think there are no forces on this planet more dangerous to us all than the fanaticisms of fundamentalism of all the species, Protestantism, Catholicism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, as well as the countless smaller infections. The philosopher Daniel Dennett. And finally, we don't only invent God, we also discover God. Looking at the creation, we strive to deduce the nature of the Creator. We take familiar images of power and expand them until they become big enough to encompass the divine. That from Forest Church as well. By familiar images of power, church meant that we can choose where that locus of power resides. We cannot piously, as seemingly do some evangelicals, when the Attorney General of the United States quotes from the Bible to defend taking immigrant children from their parents, conflating the power of both church and state as an edict from God. Or, as Church noted in the Cathedral of the World, a universalist theology, we can look into our hearts and minds and find love, goodness, justice, and the spirit of life itself. Each path can lead to a notion of the divine. The only question is what the divine might look like when we arrive. Now, I'm indeed fortunate that I'm delivering this as a meditation rather than a written text, for it would not take much careful reading to recognize that the jumble of faith, religion, and belief above makes something of a mockery of Enlightenment logic, which would certainly find me summarily expelled from the brother and sisterhood. I think my confusion is something of a hangover from my Catholic upbringing. I hear religion and go into immediate brain spasm. Synapses misfire, dendrites shrink, and wherever the emotions reside, the dominant color is red. But that's a silly failure on my part. As Church noted in an earlier reading, God language can tie people into knots, of course. In part, that is because God is not God's name. Referring to the highest power we can imagine, God is our name for that which is greater than all and yet present in each. Similarly, religion need not be religion's name. It is the framework we construct to help explain that which we cannot know for sure. It is both belief and faith. And like the God Word, it can hold the highest truths we can imagine. All in all, I like Church's definition of religion. He writes, "Religion is the human response to being alive and having to die. It is a comfort for both." Fair enough. Yet while religion need not be religion's name, it would be foolish to ignore the evil that has been done in the name of it. I will continue to read Church's work, whether the word religion pops up or not, as I find him both wise and spiritual, a man of tremendous faith. In the meantime, I will continue to explore how best I may understand faith in the spirit I find in this place with you. I'd like to close with a quote that underscores one other way of understanding the nature of faith. This from one of my other favorite writers, the author, sportsman Thomas McGuane. "Faith," said McGuane, "is how to be." How to be. Faith is being on a dock with a little girl, enveloped by church, helping her catch her first fish. Thank you. Thank you.